Hello.
Hello,
What's your name?
I'm Ellen Johannesen.
Hello, Ellen Johannesen. And where did you grow up and where do you live now?
I grew up in Oslo, Norway, and I've been around the world for a big part of my life, but now I'm back in Oslo, Norway.
Oh, nice. So you just did this big return.
Yeah.
And what's been the predominant practice, you would say, of your life that's kept you grounded?
It's been Ashtanga yoga, but I started out as a contemporary dancer, so it's always that dancer part with me, also in the yoga practice. So I still have that identity as a dancer.
And what was the movement? What made you begin yoga, the practice of yoga?
Ah, good question. I was in my last year of dance training in London, and one day Danny Paradise was sitting there in our canteen, and we got some classes from him, and it just something clicked with me. I just loved that practice. I thought this is something. This has some depth. I loved the way the breath and movement was synchronized, and the sense of calm and depth. So I didn't even know it was Ashtanga, but I wrote down the sequence, which I now think is the standing sequence, and I just kept doing that as my personal practice.
Was it an extension of your dancing, professional dancing, there was something else that it gave you?
Yeah, it was something grounding about that. I think my whole life I was a few centimeters above the earth. I was like not well grounded, and what Ashtanga meant to me was an extremely grounding practice, and it changed the way I moved and my presence in the world, I think. At least that's what I heard from other people.
Yeah, so what in relationship to their practice? In relationship to their practice, it grounded them?
No, it grounded me. They saw it in me that I was a more grounded person, that it changed me physically and mentally.
And so, but it sounds like when you said at the beginning, like you moved, you travelled a lot. Is that like dancing?
I don't know, but both dancing and yoga are these like international worlds, these communities where you can travel, you can meet people, you move with them. It's not a verbal or conceptual way that you meet people, and that was something that attracted me, because I guess that was difficult for me to relate to people in a certain way. Always this feeling of awkwardness that was not there when I danced or did yoga. So
there was a way you could be, it could be within yourself.
Yeah.
That you found through these practices.
Mm-hmm.
What did that feel like?
It felt like being in a kind of flow of not knowing, and being very safe in that not knowing. So I started with a very formal dance training, and then I moved to Amsterdam to do more like contemporary dance, much more experimental. We practiced a lot more. We did a lot more of embodiment practices that really changed my whole perception of being in my body, and from there I could communicate.
And when you say you travelled a lot, where did your travels take you?
Well, first as a dancer, I spent my first 3 years in London. Then I moved to Amsterdam, and from there we toured around. Then when I got into yoga, I started traveling to India, and that was really like finding another home and another grounding, culturally and emotionally. It was like the feeling of India, yeah, this is where we come from.
And so there's always this sense that there's this grounding for you, even though you're traveling a lot to find it.
Yeah, I guess so. It goes both ways, you know. In one sense, the traveling and this seeking other other ways of being, kind of alternative realities. I always found the conventional reality, the conventional life, extremely boring. Like, is this all? There must be something more, there must be something alternative. So as a teenager and as a young girl, I wanted to go into art. I painted and drew, and I was fascinated by this kind of alternative worlds that you could go into and draw things out of your imagination and skills. And I found the same with dancing, that you tapped into something deeper. And it also allowed you to be within these alternative communities where you didn't need to, talk and communicate in the conventional way. There was something I sought. I think that was with all my traveling in that way also, whether it was living in a monastery or whether it was in a dance community. It was the same kind of attraction. And I guess yoga was the same. It was just more maybe peaceful and more deep and allowing me to be an introvert. I enjoyed that.
So you feel introverted?
I feel introvert. It's a contradiction because I was the introvert and the performer, and I did a lot of solo work, and but I felt so calm when I was on stage, and like everything around me calmed down, and okay, now I can communicate. I'm not afraid.
And so how was the deepening of the discovery of yourself in the monasteries when it's just about sitting and...
Well, it was just more living in a community that is concerned with other values than the rest of the world, where everyone is concerned with one practice and working towards one aim, and actually also serving the community in the way that the monastery is performing the rites of passage for the community and for the whole world. Actually, that's what Mahayana Buddhism does. Everything they do is towards the benefit of all sentient beings. And there was a soft-heartedness, and there was like 5,000 monks there, and they were also like embodying in my way. How I perceived it was that they were really embodying both the masculine and the feminine side. That they were very balanced in that way, very compassionate.
So you just mentioned Buddhism there. So is Buddhism another part of the practice that has been influential to you?
Yeah, that's been for the last, it's almost 20 years now. That's also been a big part of my practice and my worldview. So it was actually the first time I went to India. I was mostly fascinated by studying the Yoga Sutras and finding this insight into the eternal world, that there could be so many words and concepts and theories for how we are put together inside, and how we can use that as a map to understanding ourselves. But with Buddhism, I really found I found the heart connection. These practices, well, if you want to be a better person and have more compassion, how do you actually practice that? So that's what I found with Buddhism, was all this, also a fascinating, ever-deepening philosophy, but also a treasury of practices that can really change you.
How did it change you?
I think I was because of my insecurity and maybe inability to communicate with people, I took it out on being a very arrogant person. I didn't like people much, so I think it helped me overcome my pride and softening up.
Your own softening. So it's your own softening.
My own softening. And, especially when I started to teach yoga right from the beginning. I know it's probably not correct, but I didn't have anyone to practice with. So I wanted to make my own practice community, and I had many of my colleagues were like dancers and actors, so they were pretty fit. So I just started to teach them Ashtanga yoga, and they really liked it. So I built the community, and then more formally starting teaching other people as well. And you know, you know that as a teacher, you come across people's difficulties and shortcomings, and you appreciate them being there and facing these challenges, and that also softens you, I think.
Yeah, because it tells you so much about your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What has it been like, you know, taking all of that and coming back to Oslo and being in a city again, but like...
Yeah, having lived on the countryside in India, in this beautiful tropical climate with a kind of warmth, and also living in the monastery. I lived in the Golden Temple in Belakupa, and then I lived 9 years in Kathmandu, which feels like the spiritual capital of the world. You're surrounded by monasteries on all sides. There are always people praying, practicing. You wake up to the sound of puja, and people's lives are circling around the practices that they're doing to liberate all sentient beings and to improve themselves. So it's very strange coming back to the stale reality of Oslo, which had also changed so much during the years I was away. So at first I felt like this is a really inhumane society. Everything is so stale here, everything is so sterile. And Oslo had become very gentrified while I had been away, so I had a hard time settling in. So my solution was, of course, again, to grow a yoga community and to start teaching Mysore again, and you know, get into teaching and create a sangha. Just like I had done in Kathmandu, I started the Mysore program there as well. So I guess I just continue the same pattern.
And how has your practice been? How have you moved since you've been back?
At first, I moved back during COVID, and that was a great time for practice because there was nothing else to do. So at that time, my practice was a physical practice. I got, you know, after more than 25 years of practice, I got some shoulder issues. So I started changing my practice, and I felt that was okay. You know, when you're an Ashtanga, you feel obliged to follow the rules, at least in the beginning. But I felt it was okay to change my practice. I did a lot of Matthew Sweeney's moon sequence. I did other things. Then I studied a lot. I studied a lot of Indian philosophy. I studied Buddhism. Well, I did that while I was in Kathmandu. Actually, I took a bachelor and a master degree in Buddhist studies and Himalayan languages, Tibetan. So I kept doing that. I finished my master thesis during COVID. I did all these Indian philosophy studies. Then, after COVID, my body just started to deteriorate. I got arthritis in my hips, and things just became really painful. So then the practice was just, in the end it was just about pain management, and I hated it. Everything I loved doing was just painful. I didn't enjoy it anymore. So I actually decided to have a hip replacement just to be able to do the things I loved, which was doing trekking retreats and walks in Nepal, my fantastic second homeland, and to continue teaching yoga in whatever way I could do that, and to be without pain.
Was that an easy or hard decision?
It was an easy decision. I didn't think much about it. I think, you know, I'm very happy that I have my academic studies and that I still have such a keen interest in learning more. There's always articles I want to read, there's always more I want to do. I'm really eager to spend more time on the Vajrayana path and get more like formal teachings there, and go into retreats and deepen my practice. So I think that's, for me, that's become my ultimate alternative reality project that I always longed for, you know. It's an extremely creative path where you actually you train your imagination and your cognitive capacity to change your habitual perception. Because so I realized that the fact that I find mundane life very, very boring or very mundane is just my own perception after all. You know, I could change that in so many creative ways and for the benefit of myself and others.
So how's it been since you had your surgery and your operation?
It was much easier than I thought. The whole procedure was much easier. And of course, for the first week or so, I couldn't move that much. But I felt very calm about it because I was deeply into my other studies. I had my Tibetan boyfriend with me, so I was immersed in the language and the culture that I feel so safe in. I still have my teachers around, so I felt very calm with it. It was a calm time. And you know, when you have a disease that will never get any better, even when you have a surgery and you're stiff as a piece of wood and you're back to point zero, it still gets better. So that is the experience that, you know, from the surgery, everything can only get better. So it doesn't matter. As long as I don't have pain and I go through all this, you know, regaining my practice step by step is still an improvement.
Beautiful. That's a lovely outlook. So if you could share something that you have learned about yourself through the whole years of practice that you'd want to share with others, what would that be?
I think it would be, you know, keep learning new things. I think it would be a tragedy if you get so attached to this physical practice and the physical body. I think you have to go further with it, and that's also why I kept traveling and why I left Norway. I had a good studio. I had students, I had a good situation, a good teaching situation, but I still felt at one point, where am I going from here? You get a certain, are we practicing just to feel good, or are we going to use that fine instrument of knowing our subtle body, having this fine-tuned instrument and this deep perception? What are we going to use that for? And that's why I was attracted to the Buddhist practices and the deeper practices. I think we have to go further, so we don't depend so much on the capacities of the physical body, because I think this, once you have that instrument, it's still with you, wherever you could, whether you can put your leg behind your head or not, you know. So I think we have to go further from there and keep practicing. And I think many people do that, whether they go into meditation, pranayama practices, vajrayana practices, whatever they do. But I mean, I would say keep studying and keep being eager and hungry for more.
Thank you so much for your time, Ellen. I appreciate it.
Thank you.